The story begins with a family, living their lives in peace and happiness, completely unaware that within just a few minutes, something so terrifying was about to happen, something they wouldn't even dare to imagine. But before we dive into this heart-stopping story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. As the husband and wife were lost in their casual conversation, a sudden chilling sound broke the calm, the distant screams and panicked shouts of people outside. Confused, they rushed out of the house only to be met by utter chaos. Everywhere they looked, people were abandoning their homes, running as if something catastrophic was about to unfold. Jason and Beth watched in disbelief as even their neighbors frantically emptied their house, stuffing belongings into bags. Jason called out to one of them, "What's happening? Why is everyone leaving?" But no one stopped to answer. They were too terrified, too desperate. Then Jason noticed the neighbor's teenage son hurriedly packing his things. He approached him and asked, "Where are you going?" The boy hesitated, then whispered, "My dad's friend works as a government officer. He said a deadly virus has spread. It turns normal people into monsters." Before Jason could ask anything more, the boy's mother appeared, grabbed her son's arm, and began pulling him away. Jason called after her, "What virus is he talking about?" Without slowing down, she turned back and said, breathless and urgent, "There's no time to explain. Take your wife, take your daughter, and get as far away from the city as you can." Without another thought, Jason rushed his family into the car and sped out of the neighborhood, desperate to escape. But halfway down the road, they saw something strange. The very same neighbors who had been running away were now turning back. Confusion twisted into dread. A few miles ahead, their car came to a halt in a massive traffic jam. Jason stepped out and realized why. Police had blocked the only road out of the city. Above, helicopters circled the skies, their searchlights scanning the streets below. Through loudspeakers, officials announced, "A highly dangerous virus has spread in the city. Everyone must return to their homes immediately." Jason and Beth stood frozen, clutching their daughter tightly, realizing their nightmare had only just begun. Hearing this, Jason couldn't shake off a strange feeling. If a deadly virus had really spread across the city, then why were people being ordered to stay inside instead of being evacuated? Something wasn't right. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a massive boulder crashed down from the nearby mountain, smashing onto their car with a deafening thud. Jason, Beth, and little Joey froze in shock, their breaths caught in their throats. The ground beneath them trembled. The mountain itself was shaking. And then, from behind the mountain, two military fighter jets roared into view, slicing through the sky as they sped straight toward the city. Within seconds, the jets unleashed a relentless rain of bombs, turning entire blocks into firestorms. In mere moments, the beautiful city was reduced to ashes. Beth's heart sank as the horrifying truth hit her. If they had listened to the police and returned home, they would have been obliterated along with everyone else. But the nightmare wasn't over. The fighter jets now turned their sights on the roads, heading directly toward the fleeing civilians. Panic erupted everywhere. Screams filled the air. People finally understood what was happening. The government wasn't trying to save them, it was trying to wipe them out. Terrified, everyone scattered in all directions, desperately trying to escape. But Jason and Beth knew the truth deep down. No matter where they ran, those fighter jets wouldn't stop until everyone was dead. Just then, Beth glanced back and spotted a school perched higher up on the mountainside. An idea struck her. Maybe they could take shelter there. Without wasting a second, Jason grabbed Joey, and the three of them began climbing toward the school as fast as they could. Behind them, chaos consumed the bridge. Fighter jets dropped bomb after bomb, blowing up the fleeing crowd in a storm of fire and debris. Jason, Beth, and Joey ran with everything they had. Finally, they reached the school, and there, by sheer luck, they found an old tunnel entrance. Without hesitation, they dashed inside, slipping into the darkness just seconds before another bomb thundered down, shaking the ground behind them. For now, they had survived. But deep down, they knew this was only the beginning. As soon as the bunker door slammed shut, a deafening explosion erupted above them. The ground shook violently, dust raining from the ceiling. But luckily, they were already deep below, and their lives were spared, at least for now. Still, one question haunted them. What kind of virus could be so deadly, so horrifying, that the government chose to annihilate an entire city rather than try to save its people? Nothing made sense anymore. The only thing Jason, Beth, and little Joey understood was simple. If they wanted to survive, they had to stay silent, hidden, and alive. But for how long? That was the real terror. How long could they live trapped underground? What would they do for food and water once their supplies ran out? Fortunately, there was one small relief. The bunker was stocked with an enormous amount of old, expired food. It wasn't fresh, it wasn't safe, but it was enough to last 3 people for a very long time. Even so, Beth couldn't shake her growing anxiety. Her thoughts were consumed by Joey. What if she got sick down here? What if there was no way to save her? To make things worse, when Beth had closed the heavy bunker door, her hand had gotten caught. A deep, ugly wound now throbbed painfully, making her even more restless. Both she and Jason feared something worse, that maybe, just maybe, the toxic virus outside had already touched them, that it was already inside their bodies. But there was no time to think about that. Survival came first. Jason knew they had to make the bunker impenetrable, so he wrapped the door tightly with thick iron chains, securing it shut. From now on, this place wasn't just a shelter. It was their entire world. Life underground, however, was nothing like life above. Every single day was the same. They ate the same stale food, drank muddy, foul-tasting water, and passed time playing cards in the dim light. The outside world was gone. The city, the streets, the people, everything had been erased. Their connection to life as they knew it was completely severed. Days turned into weeks, and the weight of isolation began crushing them. The walls felt tighter, the silence heavier. The 3 of them were suffocating in their confinement, but they had no choice. They couldn't risk going outside, because above them, death was waiting. This life felt like the very end of the world for Jason's family. One day, little Joey looked at her father and asked softly, "Papa, how long will we stay here?" Jason had no answer. All he could tell her was, "When the virus outside is gone, only then we'll go out." To comfort her, he placed his fingers gently over her eyes, making her imagine a world beyond these bunker walls. Days passed, then weeks, and soon, without realizing, more than 300 days had gone by inside this underground tomb. Through a periscope her mother had crafted, Joey peeked at the world outside, but what she saw was nothing but destruction, a wasteland, as if the entire world had burned to ashes. Not a single trace of human life remained. The little girl shivered at the thought. Maybe we are the last people left alive. Her mother quickly soothed her, whispering hope. "Don't think that way. Maybe your friends are hiding somewhere, just like us." Night fell. It was time for dinner. Food supplies had dwindled, so the family ate sparingly. But tonight, at Joey's insistence, she was given a whole can of food. Excited, she opened it, only to find it completely empty. On the back, a tiny hole revealed the truth. Something had stolen their food. Beth rushed to check the rest. Shock struck. The remaining 12 cans were all hollowed out. That was 2 weeks of food. Gone. Panic filled the air. Beth glanced at the ventilation grill and guessed a rat must have crawled in, stealing their rations. "If it's a rat," she muttered grimly, "we must kill it before it destroys everything we have left." Seeing Joey's sad little face, Jason placed a hand on her shoulder and said gently, "Don't worry about such small things. Even if our food runs out, I'll go above ground and bring more back." The next day, while little Joey was playing with her mother, stacking wooden blocks in the corner of the bunker, a faint rustling sound came from behind them. Startled, Joey turned around and froze. A rat had crept inside, trying to steal scraps of tinned food. Before the creature could escape, Joey screamed for her parents. This time, they couldn't let it go. They had to kill it. Jason grabbed a knife, his jaw tight with frustration. "Not this time," he muttered under his breath, charging forward to cut the rat into pieces. But the little creature was faster than he'd expected. It darted between Jason's strikes, dodging the blade effortlessly, and leapt onto the table, knocking over the lantern in the process. Just as the rat was about to disappear into a hole in the wall, Beth lunged forward with a sudden, desperate motion and struck it down. Dead. For a brief moment, they all sighed in relief, celebrating the small victory. But then they noticed something far worse. The lantern, knocked over during the chaos, had sparked a fire. Jason rushed toward it, trying to grab the lantern and set it upright, but it was scorching hot. As he reached out, his palm burned painfully, and before he could react, the glass shattered, spilling flames across the entire table. Beth tore down a curtain and tried to smother the fire, beating it frantically. Jason grabbed half a bucket of water from the rusty tap and doused the flames. Together, they fought the fire with everything they had until, finally, it went out. But the danger wasn't over, not even close. The flames were gone, but thick, choking smoke now filled the entire bunker, creeping into every corner, burning their throats and stinging their eyes. Worse yet, the smoke was seeping upward, curling through the ventilation shaft and rising into the open air above. Jason's stomach dropped. The smoke was a signal, a flare in the darkness, giving away their exact location. Panic surged through them. They huddled in silence, holding their breath as though afraid even the sound of breathing would betray them. Jason whispered, Maybe the darkness will hide it. Maybe no one will notice." And so, they sat there, awake and trembling, spending the entire night under the crushing weight of fear. Every creak, every distant sound outside made their hearts pound harder. By morning, desperate for reassurance, they carefully peered through the periscope to see what was happening above. What they saw made the ground vanish beneath their feet. They saw that outside, a massive cloud of smoke had risen into the sky. Seeing this made their anxiety spiral out of control. They were now certain their hiding place had been exposed. Just then, Beth said nervously, "If there's smoke rising, then ash must have settled nearby. And if anyone follows those ash trails, they could easily discover where we are. That's why they had to clean up the ash." Without wasting time, the husband and wife decided to step outside and clear everything away. Before leaving, Jason knelt beside his daughter. "Joey, promise me, no matter what happens, even if you hear something outside, you must not come out. Do you understand?" After taking the promise from his daughter, they unchained the bunker door. Jason pressed his ear against it, listening carefully to the sounds outside. When they were finally sure no one was out there, the two of them slowly pushed open the heavy door and stepped outside. Now, their daughter was left all alone inside. She waited anxiously for her parents to return, but when they didn't come back for a long time, she climbed onto a stool and looked through the binoculars to check the situation outside. Soon, she saw her parents trying to cover up the bunker door to hide it from view. But then Joey spotted something that made her breath stop in her throat. She saw a dark shadow in the distance, moving fast from within the forest, rushing straight toward her parents. The terrified girl shouted loudly, warning her father to look behind him. But the distance was too great. Her parents couldn't hear her. In her panic, the child forgot her fear and her promise. She climbed up the ladder and slipped out of the bunker. The moment she stepped outside, she realized her parents were no longer there. Restless and desperate, she began calling out to them, shouting their names as loudly as she could. And then suddenly, someone grabbed her from behind and clamped a hand tightly over her mouth. She was stunned, but luckily, it wasn't anyone else. It was her mother. A few seconds later, a herd of wild deer suddenly bolted past them at full speed. Though the three of them narrowly escaped being trampled, Beth's fear grew even stronger. The way those deer were running, it could only mean one thing. They were fleeing from something far more dangerous. Everyone immediately sensed the danger. Without wasting a moment, they ran as fast as they could back toward the bunker and slipped inside. Jason shut the heavy door, sealing it with wooden planks, then wrapped it tightly with iron chains. He ordered everyone to stay completely silent, and then they heard it. The faint sound of footsteps above, slow, careful, almost deliberate. It felt as though someone, or something, was moving toward the bunker door. For several long, agonizing minutes, whoever or whatever it was wandered back and forth directly above them. The three of them moved cautiously, inching deeper into the bunker, putting as much distance as possible between themselves and the door. So far, it seemed like whoever was up there had no idea anyone was hiding below. Terrified, little Joey began to cry softly, her small whimpers threatening to betray them. Beth quickly pulled her close, whispering sharply, "Quiet! If any sound reaches outside, it's over." They crept further into the darkness, distancing themselves even more from the door. The plan was simple. If someone opened the bunker from above, they wouldn't immediately spot them inside. But then, disaster struck. Joey's doll, clutched tightly in her tiny hands, snagged on a loose screw sticking out of the wall. Before they could do anything, The screw slipped free with a sharp click, and in that instant the doll's speaker came to life, blasting loud mechanical voices into the suffocating silence. Jason lunged forward, ripping the doll apart with his bare hands and tearing out the speaker, but it was too late. The sound had already escaped. The thing that had been stalking them from above had finally caught their scent. Suddenly, a thunderous bang echoed from above, followed by the sound of heavy, deliberate footsteps stomping straight toward the bunker's door. It had found them, and now it was trying to break in. The creature began slamming against the bunker's hatch, shoving with immense force. Despite the door being tightly locked with iron chains, the danger was unmistakable. Whatever was up there, it knew someone was hiding below. The door was solid, reinforced with strong chains, but against the monstrous strength of that thing, they began to snap one by one. Jason instantly realized the door wasn't going to hold for long. He bolted deeper inside and started yanking the pipe out of the water pump, desperate to improvise a weapon. Meanwhile, Beth gathered every ounce of courage she had. She climbed onto the ladder, bracing her body against the hatch, using her full weight to pull on the chain and keep the door shut. But it wasn't enough. The heavy iron lid began to slowly, terrifyingly creak open, and then they saw it. A dark silhouette loomed above the hatch, its eyes glowing like bright, merciless bulbs. It felt as if death itself was staring straight down at them. Without hesitation, Jason swung the pipe with all his strength, smashing it against the creature. The force sent it tumbling backward. Jason wasted no time. He jammed the pipe into the hatch, wedging it shut. The thing screeched and then vanished into the darkness. Jason's entire body was still trembling violently. He had never imagined that, out there in the ruins of the world, there weren't just merciless soldiers hunting them. There were also monsters lurking in the shadows. The family collapsed by the stairs, drained and silent. Their sanctuary was no longer safe. Any moment now, they could be attacked again. And they knew one thing for certain. This time, there had only been one. Next time, there would be many. And when that happened, there would be no way to fight back. A few moments later, the wardrobe began to tremble violently. Jason and Beth instantly understood. It had called the rest of its pack. Suddenly, the sound of thundering footsteps erupted from above, like thousands of creatures were stampeding right over their heads. Then, they all gathered at the bunker door. Down below, Jason, Beth, and little Joey were shaking uncontrollably. And then, it began. A ferocious assault unlike anything before. This time, their strength was 10 times greater. With a deafening crash, the heavy iron door finally gave way, slamming onto the floor. In an instant, the bunker's entrance lit up with the eerie glow of countless eyes, piercing through the darkness. Terrified, they stumbled backward, running deeper inside, but the monsters were coming after them, relentless. Thinking fast, Beth hurled her oil lamp at the hanging curtain. She and Jason shoved the wardrobe into place, blocking the path as best as they could. Then all three of them ran as fast as they could, deeper into the bunker. But they knew this wouldn't hold them off for long. There was no escape, no way out. And then, Joey spotted it, a ventilation shaft half hidden near the ground. Jason ripped it open with every ounce of his strength and shoved his wife and daughter through with all the force he had. Then he tried to squeeze through himself, but the narrow opening trapped him. Behind him, the creatures were closing in. Jason had no choice. He braced himself, clenched his teeth, and snapped his own shoulder bone with a sickening crack. He screamed in excruciating pain, but forced himself through the vent. Beth, wasting no time, grabbed him and pulled with all her strength, just as Jason was almost out. A massive creature lunged forward and clamped onto his leg. Jason froze. He knew this was it. There was no escaping now. With one last desperate glance, Jason locked eyes with Beth and said, "No matter what happens, don't let anything happen to Joey." And in the very next instant, the monster yanked him back into the darkness of the bunker. But instead of cowering in fear, Jason stood firm in the bunker and roared at the monsters, "Come on! Let's see how much strength you really have." From above, Beth and Joey heard the chilling screams echoing from below. Beth instantly realized her husband was fighting, buying them precious time to escape. Even through his pain, he was shielding his family. With her daughter in her arms, Beth ran, pushing through the darkness, dodging the monstrous shadows until they had made it far from the bunker. But as they fled, something strange struck them. The highway that once led to the outside world was now blocked. Towering walls had risen, sealing the city shut. There was no way out. Suddenly, the thunderous sound of rotor blades filled the air. A helicopter. Beth turned to see it slicing through the sky. A military chopper. It descended quickly, its blinding spotlight locking onto them. Just as they prepared to make a run for it, a massive net dropped from above, ensnaring them both. They struggled desperately, clawing, pulling, trying every possible way to break free. But the net's grip was merciless. Through the mesh, Beth spotted eerie figures approaching, dark silhouettes with glowing green eyes. And then, the terrifying truth unraveled. These were not aliens, not virus-mutated creatures. No, they were soldiers, military men armed with weapons, clad in gas masks and night vision goggles. The glow in their eyes wasn't supernatural. It was technology. But that revelation only raised a darker question. Why was the army hunting them down as enemies? The chilling answer is waiting in the final part of this story. Now, Beth and Joey were both in the soldiers' control. One of the soldiers pulled out a large, sinister-looking syringe, and one by one plunged it into their necks. When their blood was tested, the result came like a death sentence. Both of them were infected with the deadly virus. That meant only one thing. For the world, they were a threat. And now, they were marked for death. When the virus had first spread, countless people in this small town had already fallen victim. It was an airborne virus, moving swiftly, invisibly, from one person to another. The infected didn't even know they were sick, and the government had no antidote, no cure, no hope. They had only one solution: kill the infected. Beth's voice cracked with desperation as she sobbed, "Please, please, let my baby go." But when she realized the soldiers weren't going to spare her little girl either, something snapped inside her. Her rage consumed her. Dark marks began to creep across her skin, veins bulging, her breath unsteady. But before she could act, a sudden spray of blood erupted from a soldier's neck. It was Jason. The man who had been dragged into the bunker, presumed dead, had returned from the edge of death itself. In the bunker, he hadn't died. Instead, he had lost control. And in his blind fury, he had slaughtered every creature inside. Now, his face was twisted, black veins crawling beneath his skin, his eyes glowing red with rage. Jason wasn't the same man anymore. This was something else. With inhuman speed, he lunged at the soldiers, tearing through them one by one. But no matter how monstrous his strength had become, he couldn't stop the hail of bullets raining down on him. Jason finally collapsed to the ground, and as the soldiers turned toward Beth and Joey, they realized too late. The two had broken free of their restraints and vanished into the chaos. The soldiers scattered, hunting them down, but they had no idea what was waiting for them, because Beth was no longer Beth. She had transformed. Her body shifted, her veins blackened, and an unholy strength burned inside her. Then she turned on the soldiers. With feral savagery, Beth ripped through them, slaughtering many. But before she could finish them all, a bullet tore through her body. She collapsed onto the roof of the car, blood dripping down, as the world around Joey began to fall apart. In the darkness, her daughter had seen it all. Seeing the state of her parents, she lost control, her anger taking over. In a single leap, she knocked a soldier down, shattering his mask, and was about to finish him off, when Beth intervened just in time. She didn't want her daughter to become a monster too. Beth calmed her down, slowly bringing the green rage in the girl's veins back under control. The girl returned to her human form, but the soldier's luck had run out. His safety mask was broken, and he was slowly infected by the virus. Meanwhile, Jason's condition was critical. Looking at his daughter's face, he gently slid 2 fingers over her eyes one last time, and Jason closed his eyes forever. At that exact moment, another helicopter appeared. Beth grabbed her daughter and ran. They dashed through a pile of debris and entered a narrow tunnel. A light flickered across their eyes. When they looked, they saw the same little boy from the beginning of the story, their neighbor. Then the two of them followed him. He led them to a cave-like tunnel where his parents and several other people were hiding. In fact, these were others like them, infected by the virus. To survive, they had been forced to live like rats in the darkness. The virus was dangerous, yes, but not lethal. It only affected the infected more severely when they were scared or couldn't control their anger. But these people had learned to control themselves. They regarded the city soldiers as monsters, but in truth, they themselves were the real monsters. And with this story comes to an end. If this story gave you chills, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. There's more shocking horror waiting for you.